The REP QuickDraw adjustable dumbbells released in late October of 2023 to generally positive feedback and reception. However, less than 6 months later, REP announced their partnership with Pepin to release the REP x Pepin, Repin adjustable dumbbells, and probably the biggest home gym crossover of all time, really sending shockwaves throughout the home gym community. With that announcement came pre-orders, tons of anticipation, and then a very highly regarded release of those REP x Pepin adjustable dumbbells. And because of that, I feel like the REP QuickDraws have been largely overlooked, almost cast aside like Woody in Toy Story 1. I've had these for about a month and a half now, and I'm going to be going through 5 categories, scoring each one out of 10, and giving a report card on these to tell you if they are worth your consideration or if you should just spend the extra money to get those REP x Pepin. Let's go ahead and dive into today's video. Before diving into today's review, what's up everyone? My name's Dylan, this is Plates and Profits, where I help you build your home gym for less. A little bit about me, I have my master's degree in exercise sports science. I've been a certified personal trainer for over 10 years. And I've had a home gym addiction for the past 5 years since moving into my house. I had a squat rack in my house before we had a couch up front. I've got some really exciting reviews coming up of these REP QuickDraws, also the MX Select 55s. And then I have 2 sets of Alibaba orders that I am stoked to show y'all. Some really fun and exciting things going on. So go ahead and like the video, subscribe. Let's dive into this. Our first category is going to be speed test and just overall adjustment mechanism quality. Now we are adjusting down from 45 pounds down to 20 pounds. I strategically chose that weight for the dumbbells that have increments where you have adder weights that are going up by 10 because that is going to significantly increase the time. I shouldn't say significantly, we're talking a matter of seconds here, but let's go ahead and dive into this speed test with these REP QuickDraws. Get set, adjust. Time. Now, REP's big calling card was how fast these adjust. And I do think that is true, but I also think it's just a tad misleading because of these little adder weights. When you're going up by 5-pound intervals, you do need to take these out and add them. And we're talking the difference of seconds, like it's really not that big of a deal, but it does take some extra time. And if you're comparing this with the dumbbells are gonna win. Maybe not by much, but a little. So what you're sacrificing for that slight increase in speed on the dumbbells is the durability. And we'll get to that in the later categories, but slightly slower, way more durable. You can decide which you prefer. I will say with the adjustments on the REP QuickDraws, I know a lot of people have echoed this. The rails here have the weights listed and what you need to adjust in, and it's black on black, and it's really, why didn't they outline it in white? Why didn't they do any other color? Because it does make it a little hard to see. The other thing I would say is it's not the most intuitive adjustment system. When I compared these videos in my 7 different dumbbell video, I compared what these adjustments look like to a breaker box, and I think that's fairly accurate. And I would say if you were a new person in the gym and if you looked at this, it's slightly intimidating. You can figure it out and it won't take too long. Like after a few workouts, you got it. You're like, okay, if I'm using the adder weights, it's a solid number that's ending in a 0. If I don't have the adder weights, it's a 5-pound interval. So once you kind of have that down, it makes it a little easier, but again, it's not as intuitive as the twist handle of the dumbbell or even the clock style dial on the MX Select 55s or even the Bowflex Select Tech 52s. That being said, these are going to win in durability compared to all of those. And they're also going to be faster than everyone except the dumbbell. One thing I would note on adjustments as well, if you're going up in 10-pound increments, it's lightning fast. It's probably the fastest. The little breaker mechanisms that you're using to adjust are fairly loud as well. If you're a morning workout person like me, the more you're having to flip these switches around, depending where your home gym is, if you're close to where your family might be sleeping, they might not like these dumbbells. They might be like, Jesus Christ, what is that noise from the other room? And it's like, I'm flipping the breaker box, babe. Gotta keep it going. You really aren't adjusting that much during workouts, at least me personally. It's not that frequent, but just something to be aware of, that they are kind of snappy and loud. I saw those comments being made and echoed in videos about them. So with all that being said, I'm gonna give these a 7.5 out of 10 on the adjustment style and then the speed overall. It really is very fast, especially if you're going up by 10, but I gotta deduct some for the adder weights, and I know a lot of dumbbells have adder weights, but those that don't are going to get the higher scores on this. And then I'm talking just an additional point, just because it isn't the most intuitive, and I find other adjustment mechanisms a little more user-friendly and especially beginner-friendly as well. Going on to category number 2 is going to be the handle quality of these, and that's going to include the knurling, which I'm excited to talk about because I think that's one of the areas that these dumbbells really shine. The knurl quality is really awesome. On our knurl scale, I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5 on the aggressiveness scale. That's not necessarily 5 is the best, 1 is the worst. It's just rating the overall aggressiveness. And I think these find a really good balance. They aren't super duper aggressive, but it's aggressive enough too where you feel like you have a really good grip. And it's not too passive, not too aggressive. I think most people would feel this handle and be really satisfied. It's less punchy than the Rep times Pepin, but it's just got a really solid feel to it. One thing I'll note is because we do have the adder weights, without the adder weights added, I feel like the handle feels kind of long. Just the way the adder weights go in there, it reduces the length by about a ½ inch on both sides. So without the adder weights, it's a 6-inch handle, which compares to most dumbbells are 5 inches for Dumbbells, 5 inches for the Rep times Pepin. The Ironmasters were 7 inches, which was just way too long. But these, to me, without the adder weights added, feel a little long. Once you have those adder weights in there, it is a 5-inch handle and feels better to me. My personal preference is I don't want to have to be trying to guess where I'm putting my hand on movements. I like just having one spot that I'm grabbing. So I do want to take that into account. That being said, I think this is a fantastic handle and I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 on our rating here. Only deducting a point there because of that handle length. Next up, category 3 is durability. And these are going to be shining once again. These made some noise in the home gym world when Rep posted a video of them throwing these dumbbells off of their factory roof. The dumbbells managed to survive unscathed, which speaks to the build quality and just overall durability of these, which ironically enough, I wouldn't guess just by looking at them. If I were to just look at these, I wouldn't guess they're the most durable. Between all these little switches and dials and mechanisms that you're having to adjust here, I just wouldn't guess it would be as durable as it is. But I've seen lots of comments of people online talking about how they are tanks. So it's really cool that I think they found a solid balance of having those really fast adjustments, but also being really durable. I feel like that's one of the big things. I feel like the fastest adjusting dumbbells often lack in durability. So I think these have found a really nice balance. I've seen no one make a complaint about these breaking online. So I would give these a 10 out of 10 on durability, but I'm a little hesitant just because it's a newer dumbbell. And we don't have the tried and true, like the Ironmasters. We don't have that for these just yet. So I'm gonna give them a 9.5 out of 10, which I think is fair. Maybe they'll go up to 10 out of 10 if I were to do this review again in 5 years, but really solid. Next up is the training experience with these Rep QuickDraws. Overall, I would say it's really positive. I'm gonna add a little caveat on this, especially when you're using weights 30 pounds and under. The adjustments are fast enough, the knurling feels awesome. The length of the dumbbells is not bad when it's 30 pounds and under. And they have a mostly cage-free design. That's a little bit lying because there are these 2 bars at the bottom here, but I find that they don't get in the way and are not bothersome. I did note in my video of the 7 adjustable dumbbells, it does have a fairly long, protruding, triangular fashion that connects the dumbbells together. It doesn't really bother me though. Initially, I thought it might bother me for things like presses and things of that nature, but the more I've used them, the less that's been impactful to me. The other thing I would note about them is re-racking them is really simple. Some dumbbells, like the Rep times Pepin and the 1 kilogram Alibaba dumbbells I had, were sort of difficult to re-rack, which was especially annoying at heavier weights. These are very easy to slide back into place. And because of that, there's a slight negative here. It's almost like the tolerances are fairly loose, if you will. So as we get into a little heavier weights, there is just a little bit of rattling. The plates almost feel just a tad loose to me, like things just aren't tight. Like I don't know exactly how to explain it. That is a small rain cloud during the training sessions. There's a little bit of rattling, a little bit of, just feels not tightened. It's almost like with the Ironmasters. To tighten them down, you manually pull the two locking mechanisms, and you can control how tight you want that, which is nice for the Ironmasters because I hate things when they're rattling around. So with Ironmasters, you pull it really tight. It's awesome. With these, you can't do that. So it always feels like things are just a little rattly and a little loose. Not the biggest deal, but I'd figured I'd note it. The other thing, because the adjustments start from the in and going out, every now and then I found myself, I'll get one side adjusted correctly, and then from the other side, I'll start from the out going in and go to pull up, and it'll be all wonky. One side will have weights and the other side won't have weights. And that's happened to me just enough where I wonder if I continued to use them for, let's say, I did a 2-year review, if I would stop doing that, or if that's just something about how it's set up and you're having to use both hands for the adjustments that you might continue to mess up. Maybe it's just a me thing. I could totally be messing this up. If you have these in the comments and you've never done that, or like I said, maybe you did it for the first few months and then you never did it after month 2, that could be a thing. And then we'll touch on this kind of at the end on who this dumbbell is for, who it's not for. But as far as the training experience goes, one of the kind of unfortunate things about these dumbbells, well, mine in particular only go up to 50, but 60 is the max weight that these go up to. And getting up to 60 pounds for things like presses, rows, squats, things like those movements are doable for a large percent of the population. And these dumbbells not being able to go past that is definitely something where I would deduct some points for them. Again, all personal preference, and we'll touch on who I think these are for. But I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10 on training experience. That might be a tad harsh. I almost wanna round up to 7.5 or 8, but I'm gonna leave it at 7 out of 10 just because some of the things that annoy me are heightened with these, with the rattling, with the adjustment mechanism not being as intuitive as I want it to be. Just a few things, and the longer handles without the adder weights, having adder weights. But you could talk me into 7.5 or 8, but I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 on training experience. Still a rock solid score. And let's talk about value and resale on these dumbbells. Now, I've got to be honest. I've seen these pop up used under 5 times. It's pretty rare that they pop up. I think a few reasons. They're a newer adjustable dumbbell. I'd be curious how they sold. Like I said, Rep released these, then less than 6 months later, dropped the Rep times Pepin as kind of the shiny new toy. And I feel like these really did sort of get just swept under the rug. With that being said, the value is kind of tough to assess. I will say, I think they're going to hold their value just because they are very durable. You don't really have to worry about them breaking. But I do think they're a little bit of a more unknown. I always talk about how Bowflex sell used all the time because it has the brand recognition. Everyone knows what the Bowflex dumbbells are. Whether that's a good or bad thing, who knows? But I just think people might not know what this is. They'll see it and again, they're like, is it a portable breaker box? What am I looking at here? Overall though, the people who do know what they are know the value of these, and I don't think you'd take a huge loss if you bought them, then decided you wanted to go a different route. And as far as value goes, if you wanted to start with this in your home gym, I believe they sell a 30-pound set and then have upgrade kits all the way up to 60. So it would be a good dumbbell to kind of start and sort of grow with until you hit that 60-pound mark and wanted to move up to something bigger, maybe get the Rep times Pepin, maybe you want to try a twist style handle, maybe you want Ironmasters. Whatever the case might be, you upgrade to a heavier dumbbell. With that being said, the fact that they only go up to 60 is a little bit of a bummer, but I feel like if you go into it knowing that, you probably won't get them if you're planning on going above 60. The 60-pound set comes in at a price of $576. Looking at some alternatives, you could get Ironmasters, the 75-pound set for $700. The new about 80-pound adjustable dumbbells for $845 if you're not worried about durability. All in all though, I think you're getting a pretty solid value with these if you know this is what you want. I'm gonna give the value score a 7.5 out of 10 because you can't expand past 60 pounds. I do think that you have to take that into account when you're purchasing them. But the fact that they are so durable definitely helps boost this value score, and $575 for a pair of 60-pound indestructible dumbbells, pretty solid. Let's talk about who the Rep QuickDraws are for. And I think this is a really important category for the Rep QuickDraws because it really makes or breaks the score for someone. Who I do think these are for, and probably what I would say that when I was thinking about this, the category of person that I would give these dumbbells for is if you're a family and you have some kids that are just getting into working out. Like your son's in middle school, he's playing football or whatever the case might be, and he's training, he's starting to work out. I think these are a fantastic option for a few reasons. Number one, they're indestructible. Middle school kids are careless and sloppy and will drop your weights. And if you had dumbbells, they're gonna not work after one workout. You know, you would go, if you work out in the morning, your son comes with his buddies and works out after school, you would come and your dumbbells would probably be broken. They would be looking like Gluck's brand new dumbbells after he dropped in one time. And then he'd probably say, I don't know what happened, because that's what kids do. You know, they're sticking up for their friend or whatever the case might be. So middle school kids, you don't have to worry about these breaking. The other thing with that is a lot of middle school kids like to ego lift as well. And only going up to 60 pounds, you don't have to worry about it as much. So that was the first category that popped into my head where I was like, yeah, these would be the ones for them. The other ones that I would say is an older demographic that's not worried about lifting past 60 pounds, where 60 pounds, you can still get a pretty heavy press and that's solid. And if you felt like you wanted to go heavier, you just go a little slower on the negatives there and I promise you'll get a good burn. But older demographic, I feel like would be fantastic for these dumbbells. I think the female demographic that don't lift heavy would also like these dumbbells. Although my wife does not enjoy this adjustment mechanism. She's commented and said, that's confusing and weird. And like, again, it's not the most intuitive. She much prefers the twist style handle. Those would be my primary two that I think this dumbbell is for. And really past that, I do think I'd probably recommend other dumbbells over these. I think they're a really solid option and a pretty good blend of speed and also durability. I touched on that earlier. But just in general, I personally prefer other dumbbells over these. Nothing against these. Really solid option. And that gives our score and rating of 40.5 out of 50. Let me know in the comments if you have the REP QuickDraws, if there's anything that you regret about buying them, or if they meet your needs perfectly, they're satisfying, you enjoy the little clicking noise every time you do that. Let me know if you think there's anything I missed. Next week, we'll be going over the MX Select 55s. And then I've got some Alibaba orders in that I'm going to be telling you guys about. But thank you so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. I will see you in the next one.